Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to tonight's International Pig Club based around Spain with Isaac Huerta. My name's Pat Lowton. I'm the Knowledge Exchange Relationship Manager for the South and Southwest of England for AHDB Pork. Tonight's agenda, I will introduce Isaac in a second. Then at 7:45 we'll have a Q&A followed by a close at 8 o'clock. Attendees will be muted. Event timings are 7 till 8 p.m. The webinar will be recorded and made available after the event. And please complete the survey at the end to help us improve our webinars in the future. If you would like to ask a question, please click on the orange arrow box and you will see that there's a questions tab. Click the down arrow and that will then enable you to ask a question, which we will ask at the end. So over to Isaac, and I will just introduce him. Isaac is originally from Catalonia and received his DVM degree from the University of Zaragoza. Following this, he finished his Masters in Swine Management and Health in 2008. His career started at Nutreco's research centre in Holland and then moved to Mexico to lead a field trial. In 2010, he joined Magapor's team as Head of Technical Services for North America, where he helped to implement post-cervical artificial insemination in several farms across the USA and Canada. And he also ran several trials in porcine AI studs and published these trials in peer-reviewed magazine and at international conferences. In 2013, he moved back to Spain and joined Elanco as the technical leader for the northeast of Spain, where he ran antibiotic efficiency trials and evaluated lung lesions in abattoirs. Isaac then joined PIC in 2015 as Technical Services Manager for Southern Europe, where he supported many of the large integrated Spanish operators as they grew their systems. In June 2020, he became Technical Services Director for PIC Europe. Over to you, Isaac.
Thank you so much, Patrick, for the introduction. Please, can you confirm that you can see my screen?
Certainly can.
Okay, thank you so much. First of all, good afternoon, good evening to everybody. And as you know, it's a pleasure to be back in the UK in that webinar format. Normally, it's always nicer if we do it face to face, but I think that it's the best way to achieve more people and that people can see the recorded version afterwards, which will be really neat. So again, thanks a lot, and I'm going to start with the topic and the presentation that we agreed that will be interesting for today. So as most of you can read on the title, we are going to talk a little bit about the Spanish pig sector. That would be more or less 50%, half of the presentation, and the other half will be free farrowing. As most of you that knows me and are aware, we have some experience, or we are starting to have some strong experience on free farrowing, and I think that was a nice topic to cover today, and I think that we can go a little bit deeper on that particular topic. So let's start with it. A little bit on the agenda, and just in case if any of you have been listening me lately, the parts that we'll cover, I normally try to give a little bit of a brief of agenda, then some slide that will be more or less that what we are going and the conclusions of it, or the last slide at the beginning, and then we'll start with the full presentation. So we'll talk a little bit about the census of the Spanish pig production, a little bit about production figures, some of the cost of production that I think it's a need on the meetings like that one, and in a reality that we are living nowadays, some about the exports and imports markets of Spain and our production, where is it going, a little bit about consumption. So the figures on consumption will be, I divide it in two. Today it's consumption like the human consumption, and then consumption of antibiotics, that I think is another thing that the people is really interested. And then the last part and the longest one of the 6 topics will be the free farrowing. So let's start with it. First of all, I would like that all of you get to know what means integration, because that would be an important thing to follow the conversation today. Integration, that it's our verticalization model, that would be probably for most of you more common word, would be a company. It will be divided in integration company, so a company that does the integration, and then a farmer that is the integrated farm or livestock farmer. Okay, so as a company, what does it mean? What does it have to have an integration company to be called integration system? So the big integration company, big or small, it doesn't matter. It needs to provide the farmer with the animals, with the food, with all the medicines and the veterinary services. It will be responsible for the marketing of all the production that you will have. It doesn't matter where it goes, what kilos. It will be responsible for all the marketing. And then they will have, in agreement with you, a payment to the integrated person or integrated farmer. In the other side, we have the integrated livestock farmer that has the facilities, the farm itself, the labor. So it's going to be responsible for all the personnel that works inside the farm or outside the farm, doing some maintenance, doing, for example, some waste management, so all the manure management. It will be responsible for the water that arrives to the facility and the quality of that one. It will be responsible for the energy, so all the energy that needs to support the system. It will be responsible when we make the loadings of the animals, the carcass, what we call carcass management, or all the loadings if it's a site 3, or when you need to load some sows in a farm and the piglets, so responsible of all that management. And in exchange of all that job, we will receive a fee from animal that is going to be produced on that system. So as I told you before, I like to make this kind of, it's a different way of doing, but now that I guess at the beginning we have the attention of the majority of the people. So where we come from and where are we going? And that would be the last or the take-home message, but instead of at the end, at the beginning. So here I have a list of topics that I would like to cover to see where we were coming from and where are we going. As you know, public opinion. I mean, I don't have to say a lot because in the UK you have probably even more than us, but the public opinion became an important thing for the pork industry as a country. So in Spain now, the public opinion is responsible for probably some of the ways that we behave in front of it. So you, as all of us know, it doesn't matter if it's something that we are doing perfectly well done. So in terms of legal or it's completely legal, but the public opinion is strong. And you will see a couple slides later or a couple pictures that will reflect what I mean here by public opinion. And on top of that, we know that how strong is the opinion of people that doesn't have the deep knowledge of what the pork industry means, but they can move thousands of people or hundreds of thousands of people with the message. So that's an important part that it's changing our industry. The only thing that I wanted to cover with that is this is changing our industry, the way that we produce, the way that we reflect what we do inside the farm externally. Then what it changes a little bit is the requirements of the integration companies. What I mean by that, in the past, and you will see in some slides, integration companies only wanted pigs to process, pigs to move to the site 2, pigs to move to the site 3. It was only a matter of quantity of animals, but it doesn't matter if it was big farms, small farms, because we needed to grow as a country. But in the last period of time, the integration companies want big farms that are able to fulfill the site 2s and site 3s with as less shipments or as less days as possible to make sure that the flow is completely one origin, one flow, and we don't have to mix flows. For example, in terms of health, that will improve, or in terms of size of or age of the animals, also it's important. If you move from one site in 1 week, all the animals to fill a site 3, that's going to be easier to manage and easier to be emptied at the end. Then the custom buildings and credits. Here I put a couple of things that are important. Nowadays, I would say that around 3,500 to 4,000 euros per sow will be the cost of building a site 1. So as you can see, the price compared to the past, it increased a lot. So the raw materials are more expensive than in the past. So nowadays, to afford building a new farm, it's something that it's barely possible for some small individuals or small farmers or small families, because now the units that the big companies are asking, it's, let's say, a 2,700 sows with the site 2 or a 3,200 sows without site 2 on it. That would be the request or the standard farm size that we would like to have today in Spain. So that's more or less a 10 million unit. So what it makes is like families, small family farm, it's going to be difficult to have this. Then the credits, as you know, the credits, now it's more difficult than in the past to achieve and to receive credits from the banks. So that's going to be an added complication to a family that wants to build a farm. So we have the needs of the integration companies, then we have the problems that comes with it, or the difficulties that will be the cost of buildings. But then when we are running the farm, the energy, I mean, today I was talking with some people in the UK. I mean, the energy cost, it's super high here, but it's been higher than ever in Spain as well. So the price of the energy, and to make you as one example, because I don't know perfectly the prices of the energy, but what I can tell you is some farms in January, they were losing all the profits only because of the cost of the energy, because the cost of the energy was covered by the integrated farmer. So that's another sentence to say that the integration system needs to be adapting to the new realities to make sure that the farmer is also profitable. Then let's go to talk about that one: welfare, environmental regulations, all the base security that comes with it to keep the health. That one, it's an extra one that it's added to the farmer, that it's a cost added to the farmer because he needs to adapt to all the welfare regulations without any increase of payment fee. So that's something that it's coming from Europe, that all the farmers around Europe needs to be adapted for, but the cost out of it, it's expensive somehow. Of course, we are going to that with no problems as a country, but it's difficulties added to the farmer. So in 2010, 12, when the people was adapting to the new law of welfare, that was a difficulty in the country. You will see on the next graph how the census is going down on that years, and then it goes back up. So that means that the country is reflecting that difficulties on a different ways, that it's going down when it's some difficulties and then going up when the market needs are higher and when the market profits are higher, so they can invest on it. Then technification of farms. Nowadays, a farm doesn't have anything to do with the past. It's a lot of new technologies inside the farm. So we are changing a little bit. And I put that one maybe even as a positive one. In the past, you were listening that finding people to work in farms, if they were not coming from the agricultural side, it was a little bit difficult. Nowadays, at least, we need to show to the world and to the country as well that working in a farm nowadays, it's something that is good, that it can be done properly, that it has technology on it, so people that likes technology can be working on that one. Although, as you might know, one of the most difficult things in our industry would be to find labor. So at least we need to make our industry attractive to everybody. And then what I'm adding here, it's a nice sentence, because what we are seeing, I mean, it's funny that the presentation is in this year, but maybe a couple of years ago, I would not say that. But looks like the integration model, it's facing today in the last 12 months, let's say 6 months, a year and a half, up to the coming months, a kind of what we say in the car industry, a restyling. So it's making some little changes to adapt to the new reality, and would be on the ways that we pay the farmer and the ways that we interact with the integration livestock farmer as an industry, or on the ways that the big integration companies are adapting to it as well. Why? Because in the past, it was not that common that an integration company had all the verticalization completed, from the feed mill or even from the lands to the table. Nowadays, it's becoming more common that the top companies in the country are having their own slaughter plant. Or, let's put it in another example, the biggest slaughter plants or the bigger processing plants are buying participations or partnerships with some integrated companies to make that agreement to be sure that we receive the animals. So they are ensuring the viability of animals for the production of meat. At the end, we need to remember that we produce protein, we don't produce animals, so we produce protein for the end consumer. So being said all these things, I would say that one of an important thing that we would like to consider is, as a country, I would say we are the only, or probably one of the only countries in Europe that's still stable. I'm not going to say completely growing, because the last year we decreased 1.5%, something like that, but I would say like we are stable. So that means that the big integration systems and the way that the country is working, the competitiveness of the industry, it's going to the right direction to make the country still profitable and growing, or being an attractive industry for the investors, let's put it that way. As well as that, the true story would be to say that Spain still has the land and the size to keep growing on that. Some areas, as you will see now on the next slide. So let me finish with the topic of public opinion now, and then you will see what I'm referring to. So what it comes here, I only put 3 different news that came out on the last 6-8 months. That it's funny that it's in places. So Lorca is one of the most populated areas of pigs in Spain, in the southeast, that the people, it's claiming that they don't want farms, they don't want big farms, the town smell. So these things that happens everywhere are still happening, or also happens in Spain. So the people in towns are claiming that they don't want farms close by. So that's something that happens in all the regions, but this was a snapshot of one new that happened. This one, it was one of the politicians that said, for example, that beef meat was not healthy. So a person that is politician without any background in agricultural, in science, is able to say that meat is not healthy, and nothing happens to our country. So one of the most important things on that, it generated some kind of an important movement in the country, saying like some of the agricultural side defending that what he says doesn't have background to support that. But at the end, it's people that thousands of people listens when these people speaks, not when we speak, when they speak. So that was a strong one. And of course, he was talking about the red meat, the white meat, and all these things without any knowledge about it. The other one, and this is one that had some impact, Spain tripled the number of big farms in the last 10 years. And the industry says, if we are not competitive, we will have to import meat. So that's one of the message. I mean, still, even if we are the largest country in EU in terms of production and number of sows, I mean, if we don't become competitive, that's something that is going to go down, as it happened to other countries. So we need to keep competitive, to keep being able to export and sell, and sell that efficiency that it differentiates us from other countries. So I was saying that before. As you can see on that on the screen, that's the map of Spain. And you see, as darker is the red, more density of animals has. Then the let's say the light, I don't know how to say that color, light blue, or I don't know the name of that color, would be the number of finishing, or the percentage of finishing animals, and the purple would be the number of sows. Okay, so as you can see, and let me put the pointer, which will help a little bit more. What you can see on that northeast region, that would be Catalonia and Aragon, is the majority of the Spanish production. Then here in the south, as I was telling you on the first news, that's Murcia. It's another of the most important regions of pork production in Spain. And then we have some of that regions that are still light colors, that they have potential to grow, but we have some difficulties. For example, that one here, it's an area where we have, in the case of PIC, with some partners there, we have some multiplication units or elite farms on that area, and as well on that area, but you see that's very light. But we see on this area, the funny thing is government is even saying that we will not build more farms, even if it's one area that we still have land to grow. But some of the politicians from that area said that they don't want more farms to grow. The same in some other areas. So that's to show you only that northeast of the country, it's where the majority of the production is located, and also the majority of the slaughter plants and the processing plants are located. So this one, what do we see? In the upper side, we see the total census of pork in the country by year. Okay, that's something that is made every November. So we have up to November 2022. So what we see on the last 20 years, 22 years, it's the census normally has been growing every single year. It was kind of a plateau in 2006 up to 2013, and then it grew back again up. But it looks like almost never has been going down. Here it's kind of flat. But what do we see in the other side here? That's the census of sows. So here it's the whole pig production. Here is the census of sows in the country. What we see is up to 2007 and 8, we had as high census as we have today, actually. Then we start going down. What do you think that happened here? That's the last drop was the last years that we had as a, let's say, the last year of the benefit of the law, the regulation that started in 2002, if I remember well. That was the last 10 years, so 10 years after that we need to be converted to welfare all the farms. So what happened is some of the producers went out of business because they didn't have replacement of people, they didn't have the money to reinvest on the farm or make the farm adapted to the new regulations. After that, 2013, it looks like an inflection moment. We start growing the census of sows. That it goes correlated with that one. Although the sow census went down, here was plateau. What it means that all these years, technification of farms, professionalization of the sector, so the industry was improving, was being more efficient. Even if census was going down, the production was a plateau. When the census of females, sows, starts going up, the production is going up as well with it. So here on that slide, what I only wanted you to see is the different countries in Europe, having it compared on number of thousands of animals that were presented on the month of May that particular year. So as we can see, in red is Germany, in blue is Spain, and the other four colors would be France, Netherlands, Poland, and Denmark. Okay, so these ones more or less has been kind of flat, going down, but flat, all of them, besides Poland that had a big decrease on the 2010, 2012. And then we might see Netherlands on the last couple years that it looks like a trend that it's going down. What do we see on red? On red, as you know, in Europe, Germany was the leading country as pig production. So up to 2015, more or less, that we were equal on that many years here in terms of production. And then both lines starts to be separated. As we know, Germany was going down, was helping some of the producers to be out of it. Then we have the last drop that we can see here at the end is because of African swine fever, as all you know. And in the other side of the plate, we have on that case Spain, that on that trend it's going up, and up to the maximum that was 2021, probably 2022. So production. What do we have in terms of production? Oh, I don't see my screen now. So what do we have in terms of production? We have in the inside round, we have 2015. How was the country divided in 2015? In red, we have integration. So the percentage of the market that was on integration companies. And on blue, we have, I cannot see my screen perfectly. I don't know. Can you all see my screen? Patrick? Yes, right?
Yes, yeah, it's clear.
Sorry. On blue, we have the cooperative, and on gray, we have the independent farmers. So what do we see? It's from 2015 to 2022, 21, only in 6 years' time. What we see is how integration system has grown almost 10%. In the opposite side, how the cooperative went down, stable, but down a little bit. But the majority of downside of it was independent farmers that went out of business or either went into a partnership with a big integration company. So they moved the individual farm as an independent inside to an integration company, or were bought by a big company, so they moved the hands off. So that would be only for you to have an idea how the production system it's divided in Spain. So as you might imagine what I was saying, right? So that almost 75% of the business is in big integration companies or integration models. So I wanted to give you a little bit about welfare, because I know that for me to talk to you about welfare would be something incredible, because the welfare level that is in the UK, it's really high. It's the leader probably in the whole European area, but in the European region. But to be honest, that's only what we are doing as a country. So more or less the big picture. We still can have the gills or sows in stalls for 4 weeks of gestation until ultrasound. That doesn't mean that several companies are already doing breeding and free, but as a country, I would say that the majority still works on a 4 weeks of gestation in stalls and then are moved into pen gestation. Most of the new farms, that's surprisingly, let's put the other hand of the coin, most of the new farms, and I'm going to say most of it because I know one that was not made like that lately on the recent few years, but most of the new farms are free farrowing already. So if Spain is one country that is growing in terms of pork production, building new farms, one of the few that still build new farms, the good part of it is majority of them are free farrowing. So as an example, I was saying the other day that the company that has 40,000 sows, the last 5 farms that they built, they were free farrowing on the last, I would say, 4 or 5 years. So they move 15,000 sows that are new into free farrowing. So for me now, it's one of the companies that has more experience on free farrowing due to that, the new farms. So it doesn't mean that Spain wants to take the leadership of free farrowing of Europe and that we want to teach anybody. That doesn't mean that. It means that to adapt to what it's coming, all the new farms are going to be, or most of them are going to be free farrowing. Then in terms of tail docking, as all of you know, it can only be performed if it's evidence of biases in the flow. So what we have to do, I would say that nowadays, the industry is still not prepared to stop tail docking, to undock. I don't think that we are prepared. We are trying really hard, but we are not prepared to go for that one. So we still have to register because we still have some problems. Then in terms of density, which I think that will play a big role in biases, that's the new regulation. So in 2023, this year, the new law of the government, which is aligned with Europe, as all of you know, it's going to say that the density of animals needs to change. So we need to have more space per animal. And what it's telling us that it's affecting us because more or less Spain kills around 110 kilos. It means that we'll have to have 0.74 square meters per pig, which we are coming from the 0.65. That's going to be a change on the industry. Change on site 3 spaces available for the same roof. So it's going to change that. And that's going to have an important role probably in the coming, it's having it now, but probably in the coming time. Then in terms of castration, something that for most of you, it's surprising, but if one of the things that can be really proud, it's that castration in Spain, it's almost not done. Only done when we have to do special products, as you know, the ham that is going to be used. Of course, I'm not talking now about the Iberian ones, but the normal ham, the cured hams, that needs to have a special size, or then these ones will be castrated because we need to raise them at higher weights. But the other ones are not non-castrated. So 85, 86, I would say a little bit more even now, are non-castrated, which is surprisingly because on that we are the leaders of the region, right? Another thing that was surprised, the people was talking me the last time that I showed that slide about immunocastration. We are not using immunocastration as a country. It might be in some places, but very, very few. Actually, we can count it as 0 here on this graph. So potentially, I would say that it's something that as a country is not used. And as all you know, If it's before than day 7, it needs to be done by a vet or a qualified person. If it's more than 7 days, we need anesthesia, and it needs to be performed by a vet. So that's why probably we don't castrate, and if we do it before than 7 days. Here we start coming about important topics, or important part of the topic. The number of pigs slaughtered per year. We have on the x-axis, we have the number of the years, and on the y-axis, we have the number of pigs by thousands, okay? So what we are seeing here, that in 2000, I lost my screen again. In 2020,
you're on the next slide. I don't know if you can see.
Can you see it?
No, you're still on the free farrowing slide. That's it.
That's the one. Okay, I need
and
to
we can see your next slides as well.
Let me go back again. Now can you see it?
Yeah, perfect.
I don't know why it's moving myself from it. Okay, so what I was saying, it's the number of pigs. So in 2021, we were having the maximum that we historically have, that it's close to 58, 59 millions of pigs slaughtered on that year. This year, 2022, was the first year that we had slightly decrease in terms of pigs slaughtered per year. So I only wanted to say here that probably, as most of us are suffering, zinc oxide, antibiotic usage or responsible use of antibiotics, the colistin ban a few years ago. So all these things are having an important part of it, of that decrease, because in terms of sow production or sow census, we are not down that much. And then also the health outbreaks that we are facing now as a country in the last couple of years. So what we are seeing is the number of pigs available to slaughter, it's going flat or a little bit down on the last year, and will happen the same in 2023. So how is the evolution of the pig production in Spain? I think that this is important to understand better the production. So in red line, we have production. In the strong red or dark red, we have the consumption. In gray, we have the exports. And in blue, we have the imports. So I'm going to divide all these that it's starting on 1965 up to today in a few slides, so to make it easy to understand what happened in that part of the process. So let's talk about the first 20 years, from 65 to 85. We had African swine fever. We didn't export. We were not even able to be self-sufficient, so we were 50 up to 85% at the end of that period to be self-sufficient, so far away to have self-sufficiency. We were not a member of the EU, and of course we needed to import to satisfy our needs. On that time, it's important because that 80s, it was the beginning of the integration development model. So that helped that we started to see growth, and it started to be seen as a protection or insurance about all the others, okay? So we see from that 85, 86 to early 2000s, what do we see here? It's African swine fever was eradicated. It was on 1988. Actually, the 88 started the eradication plan. We eradicated on 1995. So we started the eradication process on that period. We doubled the production in the country. We started from that 1,500 that we see, that is 1.5 million tons, up to the 3 million, okay? So what do we see? That we start exporting a little bit. So we see the gray line going slightly up, and we see that the imports that were really high on the previous slide starts to going down to close to zero. And we became self-sufficient. On that slide, that it's from 2000 to 2013, we had the inclusion of the regulation of the pig sector that starts to regulate the manure management, the emissions, the distance between farms. So farms couldn't be closer than 1 kilometer. That's why in the northeast area, we have more populated areas, because the farms are less than 1 kilometer far from each other. We did some limitation of the maximum size. So that's well known that the maximum size permitted now it's regulated. In the past, it was not. We start to implement some biosecurity measurements as an industry. And we grow, but not that much, as you can see here, that close to 20%. And then, of course, it was the moment of the biggest growth of export. So here we had the growth, an important growth, and the imports were nearly really low as on the previous. So we start exporting to EU and to third countries. In the previous one, we became a EU member. On that one, we start to export to EU members and third countries. From 2013 to now, what we see is we still grow. So that years were fairly enough good growth. We had to implement some reduction of antibiotic use, elimination of the colistin that had some impacts on the industry, but we became more than double. So self-sufficiency was 213–14%. So what it means that, I mean, we produce it much more than we need, and we need the third countries and the EU members that receive our meat because we produce a lot. So we developed very well and very strong exports that we'll talk a little bit about that later. And we became a little bit more efficient or more technology implemented on the farms. So I think it's we are facing an important moment. So that few slides means I wanted you to understand the peak evolution or the evolution of production in the Spanish industry. But I cannot go to the next topics without making a little bit mention of the acorn feed pigs or the Iberian pigs. As you can see here in the picture, I think it's something, that picture, it's not today, sadly. It was taken a few years ago. And as you all know, I mean, Spain this year it's been very, very dry. So it's been really bad also for that production as well. So all the fields are yellow today, where they should be in better grass conditions, but now they are all in very bad conditions. But I wanted you to know that Iberian only represents a little part of the pork industry, but it's an important industry because it's an adding value to the end consumer. So when we talk about quality of meat, most of the Spanish people will think about this or about this that you see here. So the people in Spain doesn't think about finishing a white pig as quality meat. They think about that if you talk to them, pata negra, what we call. That means black hoof. So the Iberian pig, the funny thing that these colors here, that it's acorn fed and 100% or 50 to 75% Iberian breed, it's only 5% of all the population. So only 5% of all the Iberians are going to be extensive, so outdoors, and 100% Iberian, and eating acorns only. Acorns, roots, and grass. The rest of the production, it can be finished started in an industrial farm and finish it on the field, or 100% intensive, feeding with a normal feed from cereals, but feed done in a feed mill, and will be indoors. So I wanted you to know a little bit how do we explain that market. In terms of pricing, in terms of incomes, cost of productions, let's call it profitability. That probably is the last thing that we all like to know. As an industry, as an average of the industry, that's very important because it's always some people that is not making money. But as an industry, we have been in blue side, that it means profit. So we have been in blue. It's true that in 2021, 2022, we have been suffering. So we were not making money, but let's call it that this year, all this year, and some months last year, we started to see the profit again. So what does it mean? It's like, it depending if it was the feed price, it depends if it was that we don't have availability of animals, it doesn't matter what happened, as a country, we were profitable. It's true that when all that situation started, that the feed starts to climb to the roof, to the limits, the feed prices in the wall, all the raw materials, we suffered it as everybody else. But it's true that on the last 6 months, we are really profitable. And I want you to see The next slide, what it tells you, this slide, it's done by SIP, that it's a company that has probably more than 1 million of data from 1 million sows data on it, and has all the data. All the data means cost, inputs, the semen, the genetics, everything, all the inputs, and of course the feed, and all the things that they sell and the price that they sell. So from all the companies, or more than half of the companies of the country. What can we see here? This would be the month of the year. I put here the last 6 months. That's the net price that they receive in euro cents per kilo. What it means, let's make it easy, 2 euros per kilo. Now we are around 2 euros per kilo net. So removing the discounts of the slaughters. And that's the cost of production. And that's the profit. I didn't put that on red, but this is the profit. So now the country, it's been really profitable. So the country is making money out of every pig sold. Let's remember one thing. The size of the number of pigs sold per year are going down. What it means that performance, it's going down as a country. We are suffering as everybody else, zinc oxide, colistin, antibiotics, all these things, management, welfare. We are suffering a little bit in terms of performance, but in the other hand, the price is good and the cost of production, it's going down a little bit, slowly but going down, supported the majority of it from the feed price that it's going down. So what it's telling here, it's the country, it's making money, and most of the companies are making money, which it's a good moment for the industry. In terms of balance of production, here it's what we produce. This year it's going down a little bit from previous years. 2022, China, as you can see, dropped almost 50% or around 50%. So people is asking, if you don't sell to China, yeah, France, it's becoming steady, but it's one of our most important countries, well, actually the most important in Europe. But then Italy has grown a lot, Philippines, Japan, Korea, Portugal. So what I mean is we are moving from what we don't sell in China, we sell it to another places. And that slide is only to show you that as an export country, we are the first one with US. So even if we don't have the same sow inventory, we are on the number 1 on that one. Imports, we still need to import animals. As a country, we don't like that because you know what it comes with imports. It's difficult always, and you have to make a lot of efforts to keep the status of the health because it's coming health from other side, but we still import animals. And in terms of consumption, I only wanted to show you that's the last 3 years that reported from the SPAC. The usage of antibiotics is going dramatically down in Spain. So we are improving on that matter. We're still far away from some of the countries, but on the similar countries in terms of production as Germany, we are not that far away already. So if they were at 100 milligrams, we are at 150. So we are progressing rapidly on that one. And I think that the coming report will be really important for us because it will show all the work that as a country we are doing. And that's the evolution of consumption of meat, fresh and transformed in Spain. In blue, it's fresh meat, and in red is transformed. The problem of that slide, it shows 2021 that we had some effects from COVID. So hotels, restaurants, and caterings were down, really down. So it doesn't show the reality, but truly speaking, what we see here is that we went down as consumption. And now let's talk about a little bit free farrowing. I think this part is interesting. We are a little bit more than half of the presentation. We are about 15 minutes to finish, so I hope that we can do that. That's types of farrowing. I'm going to talk about the classical and the free farrowing, the layout and management and environment as the 3 important parts. One of the most key factors that would be the 2 environments. When we decided with the experience that we have today that we have to open, a couple trials in terms of preventing mortality and 1 in feed intake, and what did we learn? So I'm going to make a little bit fast on that one because it's recorded and you can stop. That's some pictures only about classical and free farrowings. That's the classical one, as you can see here. That's another couple pictures of the classical one that we can see it here. So we see the sow on the stalls and all the place for the piglets. And now I'm going to put a series of 3 or 4 pictures that it's free farrowing. And you will see always the size of the one that is on the picture, okay? So here is one free farrowing, that one is 6.5 square meters. That's 535, that's probably a farm that was built in 2016 or 17. That's another one, 625 here. That's another one, 5.5 square meters. That one, as you can see, it opens from the side, so it's a little bit different layout. But it was in a depending on the building, the layout, that's a modification of a building. It's not a new farm. And that one is the last one that was built. It's 6.7 already. And that's a showroom. You can see the whole room, but it opens from the side. And it's a really, really big farrowing space, 6.7 square meters. So feeding system, what we found, it's better control with electronic sow feeding system. We control it better. The sow area and the piglets area, we need to differentiate those 2 areas very, very well. It's very important on the free farrowing that are well differentiated, because if not, we'll see some pictures, what happens. In terms of avoiding the crashing piglets, it's really important when we open the space. It's very important, the ventilation. So ventilation will be critical, as I put on the environmental control a key point. And the dimensions, as you all know, is not clear yet, but we think what's the noise coming that around 6 square meters or more will be the common thing. That's why most of people is doing 6, but we don't know. So legally speaking, we don't know what would be the regulation on that. Here is the table of summary that we talk about differences between classical and free. More stars means the better. So for workers, classical, to be honest, and that's a very important thing to have it clear. It's not about a bad point. It's something clear. Classical, it's easier. Why? Because in free farrowing, for welfare, it's very better free, but for the worker, remember, we need to talk about safety of people as well. On that one, having a sow open since the day of arrival up to weaning day, it's a little bit more difficult in terms of when the sow is farrowing to help the sow. So the health and safety for the workers are a little bit less. Feeding control, we didn't put difference on that one because we think that if you control it well, depending on the design, you can do it both very, very well. In terms of crashing piglets, although I'm the one that I think that it's better the classical, we are learning a lot lately, so we are going to put equal. If the design of the farrowing space is correct, we think that it can be achieve good performance. Then to enter the sow and remove it, when they get used to free farrowing, it's better, it's easier to move. And to do treatments, it's a little bit more difficult because you need to close the sow if you have to treat the whole litter or if you need to treat the sow. So management, what do I say about 2 environments? How do we have to achieve? The key part will be the temperature. So the idea is that the piglets are less comfortable outside the nest. If that happens, they will tend to be in the nest when they have to be in the nest area, and when they go to eat, they will get closer to the mom. So we'll have less problems in terms of crash piglets. So ideal conditions, piglets are close to the nest when the sow is laying down happy and resting here. What happens here? It's some piglets drinking or eating and some others laying down on the side. That is not correct. What will happen here if we open the sow, if the temperature is not well controlled in that one and see that it's the same facility, probably in a different room, we'll have, or in a different time, we'll have some crash piglets that will happen on that one. So that's why we talk about 2 environments and how important it is to differentiate those 2 areas. Here is things that why we use the nest for. The nest can be a nest. It can be used as a split suckling to help to drink colostrum for the rest of the piglets, to make some management of piglets if we close it down, or to avoid the loss of heat in some moments or some days if necessary. About the areas, the sows and gills, what we are going to talk, it's different, the peripartum area. We think here it will happen or not, we don't know the regulations. But here, even if they don't request for it, gills, we receive the gills free. And we don't close them until they are really close to the farrowing moment. So I think that they eat faster, they learn the system better, and they are improving. Let's say even we think that they improve the farrowing duration. We cannot say that because we need to learn more about that, but that's a feeling. When it's close to farrowing, we need to close it for safe of the workers and probably to avoid some problems with the piglets. And it's easier for the workers to do the split suckling. In terms of lactation, after processing, our experience is that it's the best moment to make it. Although free stimulates the feed intake, if we open just after processing the piglets are still on that day, they need some hours to adjust. So I think that 1 day after processing, it's what we are feeling that it's better. And we need to be careful with the nurse sows on that one. Okay, that's important to remember that, because if we open the sows and we do some cross fostering, we can have some extra crushing piglets there. In terms of trials, that's the number of born alive that has the trial. Why I put that? Because it's important to show that numbers are important to help us to take decisions. So that's one farm and that's another farm. In that particular farm, what we see is I divided that in number of crashed piglets, but the percentage of crashed piglets on the total born alive and the pre-weaning mortality here on the right side. What we see is opening at day 5, 7, or 10. In this particular farm, it didn't change the results. Actually, it went up 1%. So what it showed to us in this farm is that opening at day 5, it's good enough to keep the good results. On that particular farm, that is a big unit with an hyper-prolific animal on it, we see that crashed piglets are going a little bit down as late as we open. What do I think? It's been 1-2 years working on that system on that farm. They still need to learn. We see pre-weaning mortality numbers higher than we would like. So we have to work with them. We are not giving up, but for them, opening after day 5, it looks like in percentage of pre-weaning mortality it doesn't affect, but in percentage of crashing piglets, yes. So we need to work and learn more how to do it. But as you can see, we have some experience. What do I have to say here? Let's remember, those farms, the people works from 7 to 3 or 8 to 3. So most of the hours of the day is not people inside the farm. That's one of the key points that we are facing, that it's difficult a little bit, the management of the free farming as well. I wanted to say that one. But surprisingly or not, for me it's not a surprise, but I like to have it documented, that if we keep the sows on the classical or on the free farrowing, what we see is the average daily feed intake, it's higher on the free farrowing. So that trial, it's more than 200 kills, and we see a benefit out of it. It was different rooms, and we were able to prove that because we have ESF, so we were able to control the feed intake individually. What did we learn? Free farrowing work, so we can make it work. That's a really important message for the industry. Layout, it's key. It's a key thing for the let's say, for the benefit of the welfare. Layout, it's very important. And of course, to keep the mortality or the pre-weaning mortality rates down to the maximum levels or as constant or as similar as possible with the classical. Having 2 environments well established is key factor. Open sows that later than 5 days, we didn't see any benefit. So at least we can say that up to 5 days, we can close them on that period. After that, we don't see a benefit. We can help the customers on that one. Below than 5 days, we need to work a little bit more on that one. That doesn't mean that we don't have, for example, we have one farm that opens, they receive them open and they are open always. And they are having success, but it's a farm of 400 sows, I think. The units with 3,000 sows with more or less professional labor or less experienced labor, we are having a little bit more difficulties. And initial studies seems to indicate that open gills before farrowing helps them to have higher feed intakes during that lactation period. And with that, I'm going to be over. I only want you to see while we are opening the mics and those things. 1 minute video that I recorded in one of the visits that I presented in the European Pig Industry Conference in, I think it was last month. And we did a video tour of a farm. And I think that it's really nice to see that that's a video taking a phone from the farm, of course, not my phone, a phone of the farm. And I recorded the whole lactation room one of the lines to show how it looks in a given time. So what we see is some animals are feeding the piglets, some others are laying down and sleeping, some others are standing up. So this is something that would be a normal view in the free farrowing unit. And with that, please, it's time for you, Pat, to take it back. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Isaac. That was very informative. We've got a few questions come through. I think some of it you've answered already, but I'll still read them out. On a previous slide, it shows a reduction in numbers, tons produced post-zinc, possibly. Oh, sorry, post-zinc, possibly. Can this be because higher levels of mortality or longer to finish the progeny?
Can you repeat the question, Patrick?
I can, because yes, right. It shows a reduction in numbers or tons produced by post-zinc, possibly post-zinc, possibly. Can this be because of higher levels of mortality or longer to finish the progeny? So I think what they're saying is there's a reduction in tons produced.
Yeah. So I think that I got the question. I mean, I think that what we are facing, Patrick, right now, it's all these factors together doesn't help the industry. I mean, we cannot say that, hey, please don't tell us that we cannot use antibiotics, or we can use more, or we can use back the colistin or the zinc oxide. We cannot say that. It would be not fair for the industry and for the European region and all the efforts that we are doing. But truly speaking, it did not help. So all this disease situation that we have, all this zinc oxide removal on the side too, that we are facing some more morbidity. So more animals are getting sick, and we don't have treatments to the whole herd. So we treat individually the animals to keep that reduction, or I like more the word of responsible use of antibiotics, to be fair. To keep that trend, it doesn't help. So honestly speaking, I think that the three factors that you mentioned, plus the health status that we are facing right now, are the ones that are telling that trend that it's going down on the last year and a half. Yes.
Is there any move in Spain to feed diets with reduced soya inclusion, and does Spain grow any amount of soya of its own?
Wow, you need to repeat that one as well.
Sorry. Is there any move in Spain to feed diets with reduced soya inclusion, and does Spain grow any amount of soya of its own?
I would not be able to answer that question. I'm not a nutritionist, and I'm not the ones that helps the nutritionists. I don't know. What I know, because I'm the bad nutritionist, so I only know the big words. So I know that we are reducing protein levels to make sure that we are making the animals grow slower, a little bit slower on that phase, and have less morbidity. I don't know if it's due to the reduction of soybean or in another ways of reducing protein. Probably yes, but I don't want to say a strong yes on the soy reply. But truly speaking, it's the protein, it's going down to help that process. Yes.
What is the typical weaning age?
The weaning age, it's 26, 27 days now. I think that we have some farms that are above 4 weeks easily with some systems, but I would say that the majority of the country would be on 26, 27 days.
Yeah. What level of threat is there to domestic production from the wild boar population in Catalonia?
So repeat that again, Patrick.
What level of threat is there to domestic production from the wild boar population in Catalonia?
I mean, as you all know, in terms of biosecurity, all the farms needs to have double fence. So in domestic pigs, I would say that it's the contact with the pig and a wild boar, it's really, really difficult. In the outdoor systems with Iberian pigs, it's a different story. That's in the south, and that's a different story. In a domestic farm, it's barely possible, so almost impossible. Never impossible, it's the word, but really difficult that they have contact. Although the threat is there, we are scared, as most of Europe, when we see the African swine fever moving at the speed that it's moving, getting inside to Germany, that we expected that this could happen, but nobody wanted that happen, and it happened. So the threat is there. As an industry, we are facing, and we are seeing that we are not growing that happy with the happiness that was in the past, that it was growing, growing, and growing. So that means that the industry is a little bit concerned about it. And of course, we have people that travels to countries that are ASF positive and comes back to our country. So we are trying to establish a lot of biosecurity measures, teaching, if it's a word that can be said, teaching, or at least making the industry and the people aware about that. But as a domestic animal and wild boar, I think it's very difficult, to be honest.
Right, another question's just come through by text. How many conventional crates in Spain, and what percentage of the total now free farrowing?
Wow. If I can answer you that question, means that PIC has 100% of the market. Sadly, it's not true. So what I can tell you is what I said. On the last 5 years, all the stockings that we did, besides that I'm aware, one, were free farrowing. So that means that the new construction, I would say the majority of them, over 75, 80% of the new farms, yes. Of course, if we talk about the total, that's, I don't know, I would like to say, but surely it's less than 10%. So if at least the audience needs a number, for sure it's less than 10%, for sure, still less than 10%.
Could we ask, on average, what's the consensus with pen sizes for the adaptive pen? And are you hoping for a government agreement?
I did not understand that question, Patrick.
Sorry, my internet's terrible tonight. On average, what's the consensus with pen size for the adaptive farrowing pens? And are you hoping for a government agreement?
So that's a really good question. As an industry, I mean, again, I cannot talk for everybody and all the customers, okay? But this is a conversation that we have, all of them. As an industry, we are seeing that the majority are building 6 square meters as a minimum. So we have that as a consensus. If they have to build a farm, don't do less than 6, because it will not happen. That will be less than 6. I like the word that you used, adaptive farrowing, because I really think, and most of the producers think, that this is the way, because free farrowing from the beginning looks like the industry will have a lot of troubles to go into that. What we've seen on the 6.7 square meters is the results are very good, but it's a farm with really experienced people inside, and they are able to win above 15 piglets in every farrowing space. So they are on average above that. And I'm really proud of those, but I'm not going to say that it's only because of the 6.7. I always say that people, it's more important than anything in our industry. And if we are not able to train people, help people to become more professional, improve the farms, we will not have success on the adaptive farrowing, as you mentioned that word. But I think as an industry, we think that 6 square meters is the minimum. After that, depending on the layout, you can choose one or the other.
Sorry about this, Isaac, but the questions keep rolling in.
No, for me, it's not a problem. I'm sorry that I've been a little bit late, and don't say it's your connection. Everybody will know that it's my English, so it's difficult for me to understand you perfectly, but it's not only you, Patrick, it's more people.
Have you put together training for the staff now working in the adaptive farrowing systems?
If I have done it, yes. Actually, we have one member of our team that it's been doing an immersion in a farm, and another member that works inside one elite farm that it's free farrowing. So we are generating that information in collaboration with of course the customer and the farmers. But yes, we have done that as a training. Actually, these slides that I presented today are part of the training as well that we use with some farmers or some farms that has free farrowing. Yes, and the trials that I show you, I want to make sure that this is only our experience. It's not set on the stones, but we will keep gathering and keep gathering. And every new farm that we have, we get involvement with the farm. We help them to establish the best management that we are aware today, and we try to improve or learn a little bit more for the next one. So I think the answer is yes, training will be key. Yes, we are training our farmers that has free farrowing, yes. And I think that if you ask me to repeat free farrowing in 1 year from now, I think that we will be able to show something different from that.
Yeah. Do you have any incentive in education to get new entrants into the industry?
So as an industry, surprisingly of what the people thinks, the pork industry in Spain is the only one that doesn't get any incentive from government, any. The only things that a farmer can get in Spain, a pig farmer, the other species, they might have some incentives. But the pig farmer, it's if they adapt the farm into sustainability project and they add solar panels or green energy or geothermal energy and those things. On that ones, yes, they might have some incentives. In terms of training people or anything related, they don't.
Down to the last few questions. With Spanish production focused on the export market and China seemingly withdrawing from the international market, who or what is the next focus? I think you sort of mentioned France, but is there any other markets you're looking to open?
I mean, I'm not the one looking to open, so I don't know the strategy of that big processing companies or export companies. What I can remark, probably is the best thing to do it or to answer that question. It's, as you saw on that slide, it's amazing that China dropped 50% and still dropping, so keeps dropping. And we almost did not drop, or we dropped very, very small compared to the quantity that China dropped, the exports. What it means is that we learned that diversification was a key before that happened. So we invest a lot as a country. I remember that when China was, everybody was focusing on China, right? At that time, 2020, 2019, all these years. And I remember some big companies saying, we will invest in Japan, we will invest in Philippines, we will invest on the export market in Korea or South Korea, sorry. It's incredible that China dropped and we didn't suffer that much, the drop of China. We suffered because, of course, nobody wants to have the losses. On top of that, we have less production and we have more European market competitiveness because with Germany having ASF and being not able to export to third countries and only to you, that's been more competitiveness inside Europe. So we had to improve our competitiveness in Europe. But on top of that, we improve other third markets. So it looks like we didn't suffer that much, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah. With summers appearing to get hotter in the UK, how do you cope with the extreme heat in Spain?
It's funny that somebody asked that question. I mean, I've been visiting some of the UK customers on the last 2-3 years quite often. So I know that your summers are getting a little bit tougher. I would say that in Spain, every year is worse than the previous one, to be honest. So every year looks worse than the previous one. And when we say that we have a very long summer, the next one is even longer. But I think that because that happened many, many years ago, and some areas of Spain are already very hot for a long time, I think that we work a little bit different than you guys. So for example, the cooling systems, it's something very common that we open them already in March, April. We start to turn them on because as a technical person now, what I'm going to say, if the animal suffers during gestation, one lactation, then it's win and keep suffering. The second lactation, it's going to be really tough. So the animals will suffer a lot. I'm not talking about the hot day that it's going to cause some mortality problems everywhere in the world. But at least what we learn is if we can keep them as cool as possible during the whole process and in lactation as very, very good conditions, we mitigate a little bit the problem. So what I'm thinking is the way that we invest in terms of anything that is related to cooling with the animals would be something crucial for that makes the difference between Spain and some other countries, I would say.
Yeah, thank you very much. How do the Spanish record antibiotic usage?
So it's a fair question. To be able to answer that properly, I'm going to tell you what, for example, I have some team members that previously were active veterinarians inside of an integrated company, because I don't know if the people knows how it works, but in Spain, we don't have veterinary clinics that sells the vaccines or the antibiotics. So we have veterinary people inside the company that makes a prescription when it's needed. So I think, if I'm correct on that one, that every 3 months, the veterinary makes the prescription and the company receives the prescription. They send the antibiotics or the drugs into the farm, and that drugs are used. They have a recording system to match inventories with usage. And then these reports or these prescriptions are sent as a report based every 3 months, if I'm right, to, let's say, the authorities. I don't know who is the legal statement that controls that, but to the authorities. And then, of course, once a year, the SBAC is going to make the report, and it's sent on that format that is requested. So that's more or less how we do it. And what it's been different lately, it's like the veterinarians needs to make the prescription, and they need to upload that prescription into the site, into I don't know if it's a cloud or a system, that is the official system. So everybody reports the same way, which it makes much easier than in the past to control it, much easier than in the past to see where we are failing and where we are using more than we should, and make specific plans. And as I said before, 2018, we were very, very, very far away from what we wanted to be, or we were asked to be. I think 2022, we were already really close to our, let's say, competitor countries. Probably we are not at Norway or Sweden levels, but as an industry, I think that we went down rapidly on the last 3-4 years. And I hope that the next report from SBAC is going to show it. We are already close in 2022, so the next one will be 2021. So probably we are on the right direction, and that's the way that we report.
Yeah, not sure if this is a question you can answer. Will Spain continue to import more and more weaners from other countries, or will they increase their own sow herd to make up more of their own production going forward?
I think that I can answer that one because we are getting to the end, and that's, I mean, I don't have the magic ball to answer those things. If I had it, I will not be here. I will be in Maldives today or something like that. So to be fair on the question, I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but I'm totally true or sure that we don't want to depend on imports. Imports are going to become more difficult every time. It's going to be difficult to move animals in Europe. So it is already, but it's going to be every time more difficult in terms of temperature movements and conditions and hours. So I think that not because only regulations, as a country, at least as a veterinarian, I don't like to receive imports because that's moving some health issues from other places to our place. So I would not, if I have a big flow from a multiplier and I don't want to change it, imagine to receive winners. So as a country, we still import a lot because of all that situations together that you mentioned before, make that our production of animals is lower than last year's. Our demands are higher. Our sow inventory is kind of flat. So I would expect if we improve a little bit the management and we are able to produce a little bit better as we were producing in 2020, in the coming years or in the coming year, if possible, as soon as possible, I think that we will need less imports to be filling that gap. Because of course the gap is because the slaughter plants need pigs. The price is very good because the slaughter plants needs pigs, and the country is not producing as many pigs as we need. That's why we import. So If you tell me my crystal ball future would be, we will import less the coming years, and our production and performance should or has to improve.
Since it appears that the impact of Rosalia is much more severe than other strains of PRRS, are there different recommendations around how to treat, manage, prevent compared to other strains? Vaccination rate appears to be 70% in the sow herds, so there could be some debate there around whether that could or should be higher, given the serious impact of the disease.
I mean, I think this question it's really difficult, because I don't think that the management needs to be different, and I don't think that vaccines are working less or more. I think that vaccines are doing what they are supposed to do. Of course, let's be honest. I mean, they are not protecting us PCV2 vaccine in the past, right? That was a day and night situation when we started the vaccination of circovirus, and then the problem went down to very low levels. So it means the vaccine was completely efficient. So it's true that it's not the efficiency of the vaccines like the circovirus vaccines. If not, we will not be talking today. On top of that, Rosalia, what I would say that I think it's a very good fair point. I don't think that management, be careful on that one. I'm not talking about vaccines. Management, I don't think that has to change from what we recommend from the other viruses. What it really tells us that biosecurity, it's key, and we were not doing as good as we thought. So that's something that sometimes happens in places like, no, I'm very good on that things, but then we see some weaknesses. Rosalia is telling your weaknesses. So when Rosalia is in the country and is moving as it is moving today, I think it's telling us that we have room for improvement. I would say that one. But right, in terms of MacRebel and all that management, it's exactly the same. It works, actually.
Right, this will be the very last question. So thank you very much. We need to avoid confusing language. Most non-farming people would not call the systems you have shown as free. Could you comment, please? And then the UK are using adaptive farrowing as the name for the system. So what are your thoughts?
So the question is, we should align more on the wording?
I believe that, yes, that's part of it. And I think the fact that most non-farming people would not call the system that you've shown as free farrowing.
I think it's a really fair point, Patrick, and a really fair point for the people that make that comment. We call it free farrowing since the beginning because that was the way that you can set the sow free. So maybe it's a bad translation out of it, and I would agree. And if the people is listening today, you and me speaking, they will understand that language barriers still there. So we have barriers with the workers, we have barriers with the industry. We don't speak the same language with European regulations and Brussels. So I think that language should be more uniform. And truly speaking, I don't know how to translate perfectly adaptive farrowing, but because my English is bad, but not as bad as it was in the past, I think I like it more. So to be honest, I like it more adaptive farrowing than free farrowing, because I know that the mentality can lead to saying that we are not telling the truth in the industry, and it's not about that. It's that we are setting the animal free, so probably adaptive farrowing would be perfectly working. And as you know, it's working. The regulations are working today on that, and they are making some notes out of it. I don't know what's going to happen. Nobody knows, I guess. Some people is closer to that, people from Brussels than me. But truly speaking, adaptive should be a better word for what we have to do. At least today, with our knowledge, if we don't want to kill the industry, we don't want to kill the farmers and make them less efficient, I think adaptive farrowing would be the perfect word. I don't know adaptive will mean opening them on day 3, 4, 5, but I'm pretty sure that today, a 3,000 unit, a 2,000 unit, 1,000 sows unit, in a regular basis, in a very constant performance level, will be able to do it with the same numbers. Today, that happened in 2012 when was the last year of the regulation of the welfare. So we have to improve, we have to learn, and science needs to support it. So this, what I show you guys here, it's field trials. We try to be as scientific as possible, but this is not a scientific trial. But truly speaking, it's a trial with a lot of data. So I think that we need to mix the university knowledge, research knowledge, add that to the field trials, and start to doing in field conditions with normal farms, with normal people. Because when I was a student in Netherlands, as you said at the beginning, I was 18 hours in the farm because I was doing a trial, and I was 18 hours going every hour to the farrowing unit and seeing the piglets and counting and making some notes, because that was my work. So probably the crushing piglets on that time that I was there, it was less than in a normal conditions. So to be honest and fair, I think we need science, we need universities, we need research, then we need people with a little bit more, let's say, I don't know how to say, the German of willingness to learn, willingness to adapt to new systems, to learn, to put that on place in field conditions, and then we'll have the following people that will follow the rest. But we need to generate information before setting up the rules or the legislation. That's my opinion.
Well, that was the very last question, and thank you immensely, because that was absolutely brilliant. And obviously it's brought out lots of questions, which has made us overrun, but I don't see that as a bad thing. So I'd like to say thank you, Isaac, from everyone that's attended, and I will catch up with you shortly.
Okay, thank you so much, everybody, and I hope that the people enjoyed, and anybody that needs anything, you know how to find me. Thank you, Patrick, and thank you the rest.
And if anyone has got any further questions, just get in touch and I can pass them on to Isaac, and I'm sure he'll kindly answer them.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much.
And good night.
Take care.
Cheers.
Have a good night, everybody.
No.
Bye-bye. Cheers.